to more, or should lead to more nuanced reviews themselves. Audience, when you're looking at game reviews, does it affect what games you actually buy? Please let us know below, and please like and subscribe for more. There's been a trend in premium handsets recently that we are seeing something change quite a bit.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur. I need you to understand what a phenomenal show we're gonna put on tonight for you guys. You know why? It's not us, it's you. No, it's not us, it's the news. The news is phenomenal. Every day it surprises me a little bit, and today it surprised me a lot. In just a little bit, I'm gonna give you UFOs. I'm not kidding. And now the world has changed. Anyways, and I've decided after reading the news today that 2018 is going to be mind-bending. If you thought 2016 was crazy and 2017 was mental, wait till you get a load of 2018. Okay, so all right, later in the program, the world is so topsy-turvy that Aaron Burnett had a shining moment on television. We're gonna tell you about that. A guy trying to become a federal judge did not have a shining moment. You're gonna see that in a little bit. And then I'm gonna tell you what a WOFA is and how you're gonna be involved in a WOFA and you're gonna love WOFA. I'm gonna tell you about how there's a new insane conspiracy theory, of course, on Fox News Channel, and that one doesn't even have anything to do with UFOs. I'm gonna tell you about how Elizabeth Warren has responded to TYT stories. I'm gonna tell you, if I have time, I'm gonna pick apart Jimmy Dore. What? Whoa, interesting. Okay, you're gonna want to catch this whole show. And then Michigan has a wonderful experiment in democracy. What is going on? There's even good news on the show today. All right, now by the way, it's a perfect moment that if you don't have Young Turks membership yet, and sometimes of course you're gonna miss parts of the show and it's a 2-hour show, and then there's a post game and all that, and then there's old school and aggressive progressive. So get the gift of membership either for yourself or for a loved one. $25 gets you 3 months. Try it out. Have them try it out. I think they'll love it. tytnetwork.com/gift. Okay, let's go over here and do UFOs. Apparently, the Pentagon had a fascinating project called Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Now, if you're the Pentagon, you're going to want to identify threats in the air. That makes sense. So were they trying to identify Chinese or Russian threats? No. Indian, Pakistani? No. UFOs, alien threats. Awesome. This whole story is made of awesome. At the end, I'm gonna show you a video of UFO. I think, and apparently the US government thinks. Hold for it, because you want all the details of this amazing story. So New York Times wrote this. They explained that there was actually a group, and it was run by a military intelligence official, Luis Elizondo. I'm gonna give you clips from him too in a second. On the 5th floor of the Pentagon C ring, deep within the building's maze. Already it's cool. From now on, anything that's secretive, I'm gonna say that's on the 5th floor of the C ring. Okay, which is great. Okay, now they explained that this program ran for a little while, and it might still be running, and that the Pentagon had looked into this in the past. So let me give you details. The Defense Department has never before acknowledged the existence of the program, which it says it shut down in 2012. But its backers say that while the Pentagon ended funding for the effort at that time, the program remains in existence. That's our old alien beep. Okay, for the past 5 years, they say officials with the program have continued to investigate episodes brought to them by service members while also carrying out their other Defense Department duties. Now, look, you know, your Uncle Harry, who's halfway there and halfway not there mentally, he comes over at Thanksgiving and tells you about UFOs that did X, Y, and Z to them. You say maybe, maybe not, right? But most of these data is collected from US service members. So now, does that mean that a guy, because he's in the US military, is by definition more trustworthy? No, not necessarily, of course, but so when Bob comes in and tells me, look, man, I know how aircraft act and they don't act that way, I give that 0% credibility. Okay, when a Navy pilot's in the air and he sees a UFO and says an aircraft does not act that way, I give it a lot more credibility. Okay, it's not the end all be all, but pretty interesting. So let's go back in time for when they originally started doing programs like this and find out what they found out back then, when we had a lot less technology at our disposal. In 1947, the Air Force began a series of studies that investigated more than 12,000 claimed UFO sightings before it was officially ended in 1969. The project, which included a study codenamed Project Blue Book, I love names like that, started in 1952, concluded that most sightings involved stars, clouds, conventional aircraft, or spy planes. Although 701 remained unexplained. Okay, but that was back then, and we just didn't have that much technology, and people believed in more kooky stuff back then. So, all right, grain of salt, okay. Now let's come back to what was happening recently. The shadowy program, parts of it remain classified, began in 2007, and initially it was largely funded at the request of Harry Reid, a Nevada Democrat who was a Senate Majority Leader at the time and who has long had an interest in space phenomenon. Okay, hey, Harry Reid did something in the Senate, bless his heart. Okay, and if he found aliens, okay, maybe he rescued his legacy a little bit. Anyways, by the way, I liked Project Blue Book. If somebody comes to me and says, do you want to be involved in Project Blue Book? My answer is a definitive yes or a definitive no. Okay, because it either involves murdering somebody or finding aliens. I'm in for the alien part, not in for the murdering things. Okay, anyway, you can tell that I find this story cool, but they have real evidence we're gonna get to in a second. So where'd the money come from? Well, most of the money went to an aerospace research company run by a billionaire entrepreneur and longtime friend of Mr. Reid's, Robert Bigelow, who is currently working with NASA to produce expandable craft for humans to use in space. Now, the money that was allocated to it was tiny. It was only $22 million out of us at the time $600 billion Pentagon budget. It was 22 million, not billion. So this is a very small number for the Pentagon. I don't like that it went to Harry Reid's friend. You can't apparently do anything in the Senate without at least a little bit of corruption sprinkled in. They would argue that it's not, but I wish that it went to someone who was not a friend of the guy who financed it through the government. Anyway, even Harry Reid says this was so-called black money. Senator Stevens knows about it. Inouye, Senator Inouye knows about it, but that was it, and that's how we wanted it. So it was those three senators that okayed it. Also, the first time black money has ever been used in a positive connotation. Usually, black money is, that thing where we sent a lot of money and weapons down to Nicaragua and 22,000 civilians died. That was black money. Or, bunch of billionaire donors got together and got themselves $1 trillion tax cut. That was black money. So this is actually black money or dark money that actually went to something interesting to try to see if there's UFOs. But notice, by the way, those two senators who approved it back then, apparently in a secured room in the Capitol with just those three senators, Reid, Inouye, and Stevens. Reid is now retired. Inouye has passed away, and so has Stevens. They were both really old. Anyway, now back to Bigelow, who's the one doing the research. You might have seen him on 60 Minutes. He's very wealthy, and he's certainly very positive about whether there are alien forces on this planet and whether they've reached out to us. He explained that he was, quote, absolutely convinced that aliens exist and that UFOs have visited Earth. Let me break down that sentence for you guys, because do aliens exist? Almost certainly, 99.99999% chance, and you could keep going with those nines, because what? We're the only thing in the whole universe with billions upon billions of stars and galaxies and planets. We're the only sentient life forms in the universe? That's preposterous. Almost certainly not the case, and it's egotistical to think that it would be the case, and I would argue borderline ignorant. Whether they visited Earth, the second part of the sentence, is a completely different matter, and that requires evidence, and previously we had not had it. So let's dive in a little bit more. We're working our way towards the video here. Working with Mr. Bigelow's Las Vegas-based company, the program produced documents that describe sightings of aircraft that seem to move at very high velocities with no visible signs of propulsion, or that hovered with no apparent means of lift. Interesting. Now, look, this guy is convinced that aliens exist. I don't know if he became convinced because of the project or he was convinced before the project. That would affect his credibility a little bit, but remember, they're gathering the evidence largely from US military members and other credible sources, okay? Officials with the program have also studied videos of encounters between unknown objects and American military aircraft, including one released in August of a whitish oval object about the size of a commercial plane, chased by 2 Navy FA-18F fighter jets from the aircraft carrier Nimitz off the coast of San Diego in 2004. Now, that stuff's real, man. So you do that information whatever you like. Let me just give you a couple more facts before the video. They said they collected metal alloys and other materials that Mr. Elizondo and program contractors said had been recovered from unidentified aerial phenomena. I don't know how they know that it was recovered from those UFOs, if they know that. But boy, that's interesting. Also, researchers studied people who said they had experienced physical effects from encounters with the objects and examined them for any physiological changes. But remember, a lot of this is still classified, so we don't know if there were any physiological changes or what the results there were. The program collected video and audio recordings of reported UFO incidents, including footage from a Navy FA-18 Super Hornet showing an aircraft surrounded by some kind of glowing aura traveling at high speed and rotating as it moves. And ladies and gentlemen, buckle up, brace for impact. This appears to be a US military plane and its crew coming into contact with an unidentified flying object. Watch.
Dude, that is a fucking drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots to the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's like another thing, it's rotating.
They didn't have me until it rotated. And then when it rotated, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because it looks unidentified flying object. Could it be that the Chinese have come up with a drone that's amazing and can do that stuff? Maybe. But if it's not maybe the Chinese, I don't know what the other maybe is. So mind blown. Hold, here comes Elizondo. He was in charge of the program. He went on television recently because he ran it until it was financed from 2007 to 2012. And then he continued to run it with the CIA and others when it wasn't technically financed. Finally, in October, he was frustrated that Defense Secretary Mattis was not giving it the support that it needed. So he resigned and now has come public. Let's listen.
So let me just ask you point blank the question. Do you believe that life from somewhere else, while you ran this program, came here, visited, observed?
I will tell you unequivocally that through the observation, scientific methodologies that were applied to look at this phenomena, that these aircraft, we'll call them aircraft, are displaying characteristics that are not currently within the US inventory, nor in any foreign inventory that we are aware of.
I love how military guys talk. It is not currently in the US military inventory, nor in any inventory we're aware of. Already sounds badass. Burnett doing a great job here with a follow-up question. Let's watch.
So I know you're being clear, but I mean, the answer is yes.
My personal, I can't speak on behalf of the government. Obviously, I'm not in the US government anymore. My personal belief is that there is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone, whatever that means.
Here's what it means. They're here. Look, guys, I don't know. Of course I don't know. It requires evidence. And so before, there was no evidence that we knew of publicly. Now there is some. Make of it what you will, and I don't know what to make of it. And it's entirely possible that they are unidentified and will later be identified, and we'll figure out what the hell is going on. We gotta, you know what? I need an alien ban until we figure out what the hell is going on. Okay, we got to ban people coming in from other countries. I mean, other planets and galaxies. Anyway, it's exciting times. The other thing that tripped me out from that video is when the pilot said, quote, "There's a whole fleet of them." Wow. That's all I got to say about that. Man, could you imagine? Could you imagine? Okay. Okay, I don't know how I'm going to beat that story. Let's just end the show. And we don't have to worry about politics anymore. Commander Calgon, take me away. That's old school reference to a commercial. Anyway, some of you will get that. So, all right, I got to go on with the show. I'm sorry, I got to go on with the show. All right, but you guys are going to love this story too. Okay. So Trump has been putting up some ridiculous judicial nominees. I'll tell you more about some of them after the videos, but you're gonna love the videos. This is one of them, Matthew Peterson. He largely worked at the Federal Election Commission, which means that he mainly did nothing with his career. Those are the people who refuse to investigate dark money and all the questionable corruption that happens in the country. But he was getting questioned by Republican Senator Kennedy from Louisiana, so he probably thought, well, this isn't going to be a problem. He's going to give me a bunch of softballs. We're on the same team here. Turns out, not on the same team. Kennedy did not give him softballs. Instead, he came with another thing that you use in baseball. It's called a bat. So let's watch.
Have any of you not tried a case to verdict in a courtroom, Mr. Peterson? Have you ever tried a jury trial?
I have not.
Civil?
No.
Criminal?
No.
Bench?
No.
State or federal court?
I have not.
Okay. Have you ever taken a deposition?
I was involved in taking depositions when I was associate at Wiley Ryan when I first came out of law school.
Have you ever, how many depositions?
I would, I'd be struggling to remember.
Less than 10?
Yes.
Less than 5?
Probably somewhere in that range.
Have you ever tried taking a deposition by yourself?
I believe no.
Have you ever argued a motion in state court?
I have not.
Have you ever argued a motion in federal court?
No.
That last thing by the senator was good. Yeah. Look, that was so bad, I started to feel bad for a Trump nominee. I'm like starting to get embarrassed a little bit, like, oh, stop hitting him, man. It's like when the Jew bear was pounding on the bat in the cave before he came out and he got the Nazi and in Inglourious Bastards. I'm like, oh man, no, don't hit him again, don't hit him again. He's gonna hit him again, watch.
When's the last time you read the federal rules of civil procedure?
The federal rules of civil procedure, I have.
When's the last time you read the federal rules of evidence?
The federal rules of evidence all the way through would, well, comprehensively would have been in law school. Yes.
Can you tell me what the Doe-Bear standard is?
Senator Kennedy, I don't have that readily at my disposal.
Do you know what a motion in limine is?
Yes, I haven't. Again, my background is not.
Just for the record, do you know what a motion in limine is?
I would probably not be able to give you a good definition right here at the table.
Do you know what the Younger abstention doctrine is?
I've heard of it.
How about the Pullman abstention doctrine?
I heard.
You'll all see that a lot in federal court. Okay.
Look, I'm sure I don't agree with Kennedy on anything. I'm sure he voted for the tax cut stuff, but it was hard not to enjoy that. Okay. Have you ever seen a courtroom? Have you ever walked by a courtroom? Have you ever seen a courtroom on television? Okay. Do you know any legal rules at all? At all? Name one legal rule. I object, Your Honor. All right, he's not done with him yet. One last piece of questioning here. It's a little unusual, but check it out. Okay, all right, fine. That wasn't Kennedy and Spencer, okay, or Peterson. Look, Peterson would have been 1,000 times better off just saying, Senator, these are great questions, but I'm not a trial lawyer. You're absolutely right. I'm not a trial lawyer. I had different legal experience, and I hope that I can apply that to the bench. But he didn't have enough sense to say that. Instead, he kept going, no, not at this time. I mean, kind of in law school, though. Oh, those are bad answers. Those are really bad answers. So what has happened now? Well, Mr. Peterson has withdrawn his nomination, and the president has accepted. And oops, there he goes. Kennedy says that Trump called him and was like, well, you know, it's a good job for you to find the problem ones. You know, that's what you're supposed to be doing. No, your job is to pick good nominees. It's not to pick a bunch of guys who have never seen a courtroom and then hope that for once a Republican senator does the job. So, oh God, he's such a child. Anyway, Peterson, again, I feel a little bit bad for him, had this to say: I had hoped that my nearly 2 decades of public service might carry more weight than my 2 worst minutes on television. Well, that's not really how it works. So, and look, if you're gonna be a great judge and you're up for a really important judicial position there, you have to be able to put together an argument. And I know that you're not a trial lawyer, but you could have defended yourself a little bit there and talked about what experience you do have. So that did not go well, and it didn't give a lot of faith to, I think, the American people that you had this thing figured out. Peterson is Trump's 3rd district court nominee to get derailed over a lack of qualifications. Brett Talley, a 36-year-old lawyer who had never tried a case and earned a rare and unanimous not qualified rating by the American Bar Association, withdrew his nomination last week. Jeff Mateer, who had described transgender children as evidence of Satan's plan, is not moving either. Okay, so those other 2 guys are way worse, and thrilled that they are not moving forward. Peterson, I mean, I hope he finds a job where he does something. I mean, his real job at the FEC, that if you don't know, the Federal Election Commission has let corruption run rampant. They almost never take any action. Maybe part of the reason why Peterson hasn't learned anything in those last couple of years. Anyway, again, nonetheless, even though he's a Trump nominee who's unqualified, I feel a tiny bit bad for him. Maybe it's the lib in me seeing him get pounded like that. But the other guys I don't feel bad about at all. And you shouldn't feel bad for Trump overall, because finally, let me share this fact with you. The Senate confirmed 12 of Trump's circuit court judges this year, more than any president has gotten in their first year since those courts were created in 1891. That's in addition to putting Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court and getting 6 district court nominees confirmed as well. And so, by the way, the reason for that is not because Trump is a master at getting nominees confirmed. It's because the Republicans blocked everything Obama was doing the last 2 years. So there was this huge backlog of judicial positions that needed to be filled. So as soon as a Republican came in, the Republicans were like, all right, great, now let's confirm all the judges. And the Democrats, who had been blocked all along, of course, couldn't figure out how to block any of these judges, other than ones that the Republicans on their own, like Kennedy, decided this is too embarrassing to go forward. So I'll help the Democrats block them. Otherwise, the Democrats, in their usual incompetence, couldn't get anyone blocked. And so that's why Trump has had so much success, even though he's clearly not even vetting the candidates. Oh, what's his standards? Is he a right winger? Does he have good blogs? Is he good with words? He's got big words? Oh, I like big words. And most importantly, is he loyal to Trump no matter what? And that's his main factor that he's looking at for qualification, and why some of them are an absolute disaster. And unfortunately, far too many of them have already been confirmed.
Think about the implications with this. So John Kennedy, I think, even stumbled into questioning this guy to find out how absolutely unqualified he was, because he asked the 5 people that were up there, he goes, have any of you guys ever done this? All of them had, except for him. So Peterson's the one who raised his hand. Then he honed in and is like, oh, well, let me ask him more questions. He didn't even realize, maybe, I don't know, this is my assumption, based off the fact he didn't go at him right away, he went at him because he was the one who didn't know anything or didn't have any experience. Then it carried on, and he was like, this is amazing. I didn't know it was this bad. And then on top of that, think of the fact that all these guys get rushed through. So how many other unqualified people in every level of this administration's tenure so far is absolutely unqualified and has no idea what they're doing, Omarosa. So these things happen all over the place, and it just goes unvetted or unanswered. We don't see all the 2 minutes of the worst television, but it probably happens a lot more than we even know.
Yeah, no, you're very right about that. Although Kennedy had definitely laid an ambush. He was waiting in the cave. And Aldo the Apache knew he was in the cave and that he was gonna come out. I don't know if you saw the movie. But anyway, and because he was ready with the in limine stuff, he had those questions ready to go. And to be honest with you, I'm theoretically a lawyer. I don't know what that motion in limine or lemon drops or whatever it is either. So, but I was not appointed to a federal bench, right? And if I was, I'd have studied. Okay, all right. Now, let's move forward. I got one more judicial story for you guys. Okay. This is an unbelievable story. I know that you get that a lot in the Trump era, but it's still shocking. And it's quite unbelievable, but you should believe it. The reason is this is one of the best sourced articles that I've seen in a while. It's in the Washington Post. They had 11 different sources. Mitch McConnell and other Republican leaders were in the room when Trump made these comments. And so apparently there was a lot of congressional leaders and they all confirmed. And at the end, there's a kind of a tacit admission from the Trump team about it too. So what's the story? Well, Washington Post starts explaining by saying this. For nearly 8 months, President Trump has boasted that appointing Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court ranks high among his signature achievements. But earlier this year, Trump talked about rescinding Gorsuch's nomination, venting angrily to advisors after the Supreme Court pick was critical of the president's escalating attacks on the federal judiciary in private meetings with legislators. What? No, really? After he nominated him, because Gorsuch wasn't quote unquote loyal enough to him, as you're gonna see, he thought about rescinding it. Wow. Just when you thought he couldn't get any worse or any more childish. Let's get more details. Trump, according to several people with knowledge of the discussions, was upset that Gorsuch had pointedly distanced himself from the president in a private February meeting with Senator Richard Blumenthal, telling the senator that he found Trump's repeated attacks on the federal judiciary, quote, disheartening and demoralizing. And Trump apparently lost it over that. But wait a minute, you knucklehead. This Supreme Court justices are supposed to be separate from the executive branch. So when they go to their process of getting confirmed, that's literally the first thing that they say, oh, I'm independent of the executive branch. I'm independent of the guys who appointed me. I'm independent of politics. So that is what Gorsuch is doing in order to get on the bench. I don't even really believe him, but of course he's gonna say that. He'd be incredibly stupid not to say that. That would be the only thing you could say pretty much that would block your confirmation. In fact, the very first question asked was from a Republican, Chuck Grassley, in his hearings, public hearings. And he said, hey, are you independent of the president? And Gorsuch started by saying, Senator, that's a softball. Of course I am. But Trump is so stupid, he doesn't know that. So he's like, what do you mean you're independent of me? How dare you say that? Oh God, you're so stupid. If he hadn't said that, he wouldn't get confirmed. All right, more details from the story. The president worried that Gorsuch would not be, quote, loyal, one of the people said, and told aides that he was tempted to pull Gorsuch's nomination and that he knew plenty of other judges who would want the job. Okay. It's not how the Supreme Court works. Yeah, I know Bobby down the street. He did my tax work once. He's a lawyer. Hey, there's plenty of judges that want the job, and they'll be loyal to me, like my lawyers that also work for the mob. They're loyal to me. They're good look guys. Maybe I'll get them on there. Remember when he was first asked, and I know that this also sounds unbelievable, but during the primaries, when he was first asked who he thinks would be a good Supreme Court nominee, he said Andrew Napolitano, the Fox News judicial analyst. This man is an utter buffoon. More. In a meeting with House Speaker Paul D. Ryan and the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Trump attacked the judge in sharp terms, surprising his fellow Republicans. At this point, we shouldn't be surprised. I shouldn't be surprised. But I mean, he doesn't know anything. He doesn't know how the Supreme Court works at all, at all. You know more about the American government by an order of magnitude 10 times more than what Trump, the president, knows. Remember when challenged during the campaign that he doesn't know really important things like the nuclear triad and other parts of being president, he said, oh, well, when I get in there, I'm gonna learn it's so good, it's gonna make your head spin. Does it look like he did a lot of homework and he learned it so good that it made our heads spin? Our heads are spinning, but for a different reason, I think. More from the Washington Post. The person added that he largely faults, that's another one of their sources, that he largely faults the White House for failing to adequately prepare Trump for Gorsuch's comments and to explain that Supreme Court nominees asserting their independence from the president who appointed them was a natural part of a successful confirmation process. In other words, they forgot to explain it to the man-child and forgot what an idiot he is, that you'd have to tell the president, now remember, okay, don't get upset, Donnie. He's gonna say that he's not gonna be 100% loyal to you. He's probably lying, but the point is that he's supposed to say that to get confirmed. Okay, man-child, you better not say anything bad about me. Oh, John, what a pathetic mess of a guy. Okay. So he's goes off the handle here, thinking about pulling him. They have to like tie him down, make sure he doesn't pull the thing, because people would be livid, right? And he would lose his base. His base really liked it. Now he's bragging that oh yeah, I was on Gorsuch's side the whole time. I'm the one who picked him. Oh, he didn't even pick him anyway. But then Gorsuch winds up sending him a note. Apparently the note got there late. The reason why I don't believe that Gorsuch is independent of Trump is Gorsuch is basically an ass kisser. That's how he got the job in the first place. You have to remember the main thing about Gorsuch, the one thing that made him stand out and why corporate America picked him and handed him to Trump, is that in one case, he's been pro-corporate in almost every case, right? But in one case, he said a truck driver should freeze to death if his corporation asked him to, otherwise he should be fired. Every other judge, there was nearly a dozen judges that looked at that case up and down the judicial system in America, and they said, no, the guy doesn't have to freeze to death. And Gorsuch says, if a corporation says you freeze to death, you shut up and you freeze to death. That's who Gorsuch is. So you think he wasn't gonna kiss Trump's ass? He's been kissing ass his whole career. So it turns out he did send him a note, and the note said, this is to Trump, your address to Congress was magnificent. And you were so kind to recognize Mrs. Scalia and remember the justice, referring to Justice Scalia who had passed away, and to mention me. My teenage daughters were cheering the TV. Okay, I know they have to write pleasant notes to each other, and I know that you have to write stuff like that, otherwise Trump will get mad and throw fits and maybe end your career. Aides said Trump did not immediately receive the note, but it was retrieved by Legislative Affairs Director Mark Short and then viewed by Trump on March 10th, helping ease his concerns. So earlier in March, he's livid because he said one little thing against Trump, Gorsuch did, but it turns out he knew it and he had sent a note, oh my God, don't worry, I love you and I love your ass and I love everything about it. Believe me, I'll serve you, master. So then he gets the note and he's like, oh, okay, that's better. Now, Mark Short, that same guy who retrieved the note, pretty much admits it when he says, the process obviously caused frustration, but that frustration was compounded by the fact that Gorsuch had sent him a personal letter that he never received. In other words, yes, this story is entirely accurate. He threw a little fit, like the child that he is, and nearly pulled Gorsuch. But when he got the ass-kissing letter, he thought, oh, that's much better. Now he respects me. This guy is totally Joffrey. He just is. He's like a petulant child. And so this is what he was thinking of doing with the Supreme Court pick. God knows what else he would do and what kind of danger he poses to all of us. But don't say you weren't warned. The president is an unreal character with incredibly low IQ, paper-thin skin, complete narcissist, petulant, immature, and an absolute disaster. Young Turks. Here at TYT headquarters, we are building independent media. We're literally building it. It's not done yet. I've got a great offer for you guys. 3 months of membership for just $25. You can gift it to friends and family. This is a good time to gift things, as you can tell, because I'm wearing a Santa hat. Help us build independent media and hold the establishment accountable with just $25. This is not $25. It's a lovely JFK gold coin, which I will now eat. I have decided that I'm going to get ripped. Okay.
What?
Okay.
Like, physically?
Yeah. Okay. What, you don't believe me?
I 100% don't believe you.
I will get so ripped, here's my prediction, that someone at TYT will say, Cenk, you've got to stop working out.
We're tired of you winning.
So you don't believe me?
Cenk, you don't have time to like do your daily duties for the main show.
Duties. You don't even have time for your daily duties. Because what you guys don't know is how great my muscles already are.
It's absolutely possible, but you can't have Leah run to the food truck to get you like 2 different types of grilled cheeses with like tater tots for lunch. Like, you can't have that anymore.
Let's see what happens.
You also have to go to the gym regularly.
Let's see what happens. All I'm saying is, let's see what happens. Have I ever been wrong about a prediction? Almost never. Back on the Young Turks on a fascinating news day. By the way, we have not gotten to the Erin Burnett clip where I give her credit yet. It wasn't the UFO one. Erin Burnett's been in witness protection program for like the last 7 years. I didn't even realize she was still on TV, and all of a sudden she's on the show twice in one day. So, but I will give her credit a little bit later in the program. And I wanted to note that last Gorsuch story that I did for you guys, I forgot to mention something important. Trump is so stupid, he might have thought that the Supreme Court one day will rule on his case. And by the way, to be fair, I guess there's a wild scenario where the Supreme Court comes riding to another Republican's rescue like they did with Bush v. Gore. But that's why he cares so much about the loyalties. Like, is this guy gonna be a good guy? And if it turns out I took money from the Russians, is he gonna be a good guy about it? That's why he cares. All right, so here's some tweets for you guys. Emily Vandermeulen says about the UFO story, the truth is out there. Jeff Waldorf says, it's hard to believe that we're alone in the universe. There must be intelligent life somewhere, it's just not here. Old Turk says, we'll make great pets. This is an old Louis C.K. Routine. It's not even that old. I think it's like a year old. I don't know if I'm allowed to quote him anymore. But he says, you don't want to meet the aliens. If they got here, they're probably way smarter than us. And how do we treat animals that are not as smart as us, like ants or cows or pigs? Not well. So if they get here and they're anything like us, we're in a world of trouble. Okay, Jack McAnally says, to be the cynical one, if a species has the technology to cover interstellar distances in a speed to be practical without the issues of time, then they are not going to accidentally get caught by some technologically primitive earthlings. Yeah, probably, but maybe not. I counter with, and finally, Christina Ann says, alien UFOs, Trump's gonna need a bigger wall. I love it. All right, let's go over here for an actual conspiracy theory. Okay. Well, on Fox News, they've got a lot of characters, to put it kindly. Kevin Jackson's one of them. He's gonna go on Outnumbered here. I can never get tired of the irony of that name. The name of the show is Outnumbered. They're really proud. They're like, oh, here's 4 women and a guy who they call one lucky guy that sits between them. And that's the premise of the show. But they have such a male perspective at Fox News that they're like, well, outnumbered. Why? The women aren't outnumbered. It's a show filled with women. Oh, the guy is outnumbered because that's your only perspective you have. Okay, anyway, that's a minor point. Let's get to the major point, which is Kevin Jackson's nuts. Let's watch.
What else do you want to know?
Well, I think they're going to say, what was his intent, right? Because that's exactly what former FBI Director Comey said when he was letting Hillary Clinton off the hook. And his intent, regardless of whether it was an assassination attempt or whatever, was definitely something.
Whoa.
Well, no, I'm just saying, we don't know what it was. When you say we've got to make sure that this guy, doesn't get in at all cost, what does that mean? So I'm saying there's a spectrum of what does it mean.
What? So they're talking about the email, the text that Peter Zork and Lisa Page sent one another. They're 2 FBI agents. They didn't like Trump, no question. You read the text, they're not fans of Trump at all. They're also not friends of or fans of Bernie Sanders, Martin O'Malley, all the people that they also spoke very poorly of, and at times Hillary Clinton as well, saying the media was biased in her favor. But Kevin Jackson then takes it to another level, saying they didn't like Trump, so they were perhaps thinking of assassinating him. No, those 2 things are not the same. Where did you get that from? Nowhere. He says social media stuff in other parts of the interview. Even the Fox News hosts are like, whoa, where did that come from? And think about how this guy conflates 2 different issues. He says, well, when Comey was looking into Hillary Clinton, he looked at intent. Yes. Because intent is part of the crime that he was looking into. If you can't prove intent, you can't prove the crime. What does that have to do with the intent of the guys sending the text messages related to Trump and an assassination attempt? What are you talking about? Of course, he has no idea what he's talking about. It's not a prerequisite to get on air in Fox News. I guess a little surprised that the other hosts are like, whoa, that's even a little too crazy for us. So here's more.
All right, because I know how things get clipped on social social media, I just want to make sure that we press in on the fact that no one has floated any sort of an idea that.
Oh, it's been floated. It's when I talk about this, I'm talking about social media stuff and that's out there. I'm not talking about media.
Nothing
sources.
credible.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Okay, so I think the bigger question is.
No, it's been floated. Who floated it? Social media stuff. So nothing credible. Well, you say tomato, I say assassination. Look, we shouldn't be surprised. Smart folks who actually can discern what's happening in the news aren't going to make it on Fox News that often. What's much more likely to happen is, do you hate Democrats? Check, great. Nowadays, do you love Trump? Check, yes, get on there. Boy, you're one lucky guy, you made it. You made it past our insanity meter, right? You're insane enough to make it onto Fox News. Later in the segment, he also said, Mueller is going to ask for a pardon. What? Mueller's the one doing the investigation. He's a special counsel. Why would he ask for a pardon? Trump might ask for a pardon, or Trump. What are you talking about? Why would the special counsel need a pardon? You know what the answer is? He doesn't know what he's talking about. That's why he brought up intent with the text messages that have nothing to do with each other. He's just out there to go, oh, Trump good, Democrats bad, FBI terrible. They had Jesse Waters talking about how the FBI is trying to do a coup and we got to clean them out. They had Jeanine Pirro on Fox News going saying, hey, we have to do a purge of the FBI and arrest the people who we don't agree with. And now we got another layer of insanity. A guy going, I don't know, we got to take action. They might have done assassination. Where are you getting it from? I don't know, it was floated. I know something that floats and it's pretty similar to this. But they're trying to rile people up to do really dangerous stuff. So as absurd and ridiculous and kind of funny as it is, guys like Kevin Jackson are dangerous because they're riling up a lot of right-wingers with a lot of weaponry to say, oh, we got to go get the FBI guys who are not on our team. That's a terrible idea. Okay. All right, now let me move from a terrible idea to a good idea. Okay, we got a fun slogan for you guys. Get off the sofa, fight for WOFA. So of course you're gonna ask me, what the hell is WOFA? Yeah, we recently made it up. It's short for Weekend of Action. Well, isn't that fun? So what are you guys doing and what's the action all about? Well, listen, Just Democrats, are the uncorrupted progressive Democrats. They don't take any corporate PAC money. So how are they going to win races? Well, number one, they're actually doing a pretty good job of raising money, like Allison Hartson against Feinstein has raised $250,000. And other candidates like Doug Applegate, who's going to be on Rebel headquarters tonight on the TYT network, has also raised a lot of money because he nearly beat Darrell Issa and he's going to beat him this time. But they also need volunteers. And so I love this program because the only thing more valuable than money to hire staffers, to get the voter rolls and all the things that they need to win a campaign is your time. Time is more valuable than money. So the weekend of January 13th and 14th, they want to do concerted action involving volunteers because that's our strength. If we're going to beat the corporate funded Democrats and Republicans, we all got to work together. But look, this is what Bernie Sanders' campaign did, and Just Democrats staff is mostly Bernie Sanders staff from the election, okay? And so they know how this works. They can help you set this up, but they need you guys to step up. So what does it mean to step up? Well, they're looking for 1,000 people to sign up to host events. And when you host events, and the link is right there, justdemocrats.com/host WOA. Okay, well, it's missing that F. But anyway, it doesn't matter. The link's in the description box, and so you can go click on it and get there right away. And so if you say, well, I've never hosted an event, I hear you, brother. That's no problem at all, okay? You just, when you sign up for it, a person who's done it before walks you through it. And a lot of people have met through these events. Now they're all over the country because they did these before for Bernie Sanders' campaign and people have become friends. They've got groups now that are all over. We want to do it again. We want to make sure the uncorrupted, actual strong progressives win. They want to do 100 canvassing events. They want to do 100 phone banking events. If you do all of this, we're going to be able to reach 100,000 people in one weekend. And it's going to be awesome. Now, if you can't give your time, then at least donate to make this possible. It actually doesn't take very much money at all. It's incredibly cheap. It's only $48 an event. I mean, that's, I don't know, potato chips, I guess, and Coke for the event, whatever that they're using it for. I'm sure they're using it for better reasons. But so if you're doing 1,000 events or 200 events at a bare minimum, that's $9,629. So that's what they need to raise. For that, go to justicedemocrats.com/WOFA. There's my WOFA. So get involved, get involved. More important, look, I want you to go to those links. I want you to be part of the 1,000 people that sign up. I want you to get involved in this and make sure these guys win and they actually represent you, and it's gonna be awesome. But more important than anything else is I just want you to get involved. Whether it's Justice Democrats or Wolfpack or anything else, look around, do your own research, but get in the fight. So if you're sitting around on your couch or your sofa, get up, get up. They want you to sit there. They want you to think that change is not possible. That's their biggest weapon. Our biggest weapon is hope. Hope is what the civil rights leaders had. Hope is what the women's suffragettes had. And they were against impossible odds, and they won anyway. But the only way to win is to actually stand up and fight together. So whether it's your time or any kind of resources you got, donate to that cause or any cause that you think is right, and fight back against corporate power and the donor class that has taken over our government and our democracy. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could say, and you really could if this works, that you were one of the people that brought democracy back to America? Let's go do it together. All right, now I've got to take one more break, guys. When I come back, Elizabeth Warren speaks out on a story from TYT Investigates, which is awesome, which was funded by you guys, tytnetwork.com/gift. And then I want to see if I have time to go after Jimmy Dore. Come on, that'll be fun. So come back, I'll do that. right, back on a Young Turks. A couple of quick tweets for you guys. Left of center says, you can't fight crazy with nice, and the far right is fucking crazy. So when you look at the Kevin Jackson of the world, it does appear that way. Ray for Madness says, the right has its conspiracy theories about a coup on Trump by the intel agencies. The nominal left has its conspiracy theories about Putin staging a coup in America. I've seen more evidence of the former, but neither rise to any level of serious credibility. Yeah. Okay, agree to disagree. Look, I'm not talking about Putin doing a coup. A coup is an actual physical act involving usually tanks and force and violence. But I know there's some of you guys out there who still don't believe in Russian interference in the election or otherwise. It's okay. We'll see. You're wrong, but bless your heart. We'll see when the evidence comes out. All right, let's go over here and do more stories. Okay. No, not yet. I want to do Elizabeth Warren first. I'll get to Jimmy in a second. Okay. So TYT Investigates has been doing a great series on how companies that are claiming that they're going to create jobs with the giant tax cuts that they're getting aren't actually creating jobs, and they have no intention of creating jobs. And first in that series was featuring UPS and FedEx. So our reporters don't have any grudge against any particular company. They just happen to look at companies from different verticals, including Apple, Lockheed Martin, and these particular companies, and to see, well, are they creating jobs? Do they have plans in motion to create jobs? And if they do, they do. And if they don't, well, then they probably shouldn't use the talking points about how the tax cuts are going to create jobs, because that is not their intent. Well, they found out that in the case of UPS and FedEx, they actually do not have any intention. And please go back and read those stories. We'll have some of them in the links in the description box below, and see how they explain that and how they proved it. So let me give you a quick synopsis in this story by Steve Horn. TYT reported that two companies among America's largest employers already have billions of dollars in cash on hand and are investing hundreds of millions in initiatives that stand to reduce their employment levels. That's referring to UPS and FedEx. Well, now, US Senator Elizabeth Warren has picked up on those facts and is talking about it. She said giant corporations like UPS and FedEx have billions of dollars in cash on hand that they could already be using to increase wages or hire more workers. If they aren't using this money to improve the lives of Americans now, there's no reason to believe they'll do otherwise with the windfall they'll get if Republicans pass this reckless tax bill. So, look, I'm really proud of the TYT Investigates team. That portion of the company does objective reporting, and the results speak for themselves. And at the same time, if it leads to recognition among the people that can do something about these issues, and they actually take action to address it, that is wonderful. So in this case, the Democrats are outvoted, and the Republicans will almost certainly pass that tax bill. But at least we're getting the word out that it is not for jobs. It does not do that. So more to that, Elizabeth Warren also said, the big lie Republicans have been telling for decades is that massive tax cuts for corporations will lead to higher wages and more jobs. The last time we handed out big tax breaks to corporations, they walked out with sacks of money while the American worker got kicked to the curb. Well, Steve Horn actually went and investigated that as well. That was her charges about something that happened in 2004. So let's give you the facts on that. He says Warren was apparently referring to the 2004 tax holiday on corporate repatriation of overseas profits. A 2011 report by the Institute for Policy Studies found that the companies repatriating the most money actually laid off workers in the years following, because there was no mandate in the legislation to create jobs. So I reported about that in the past on the Young Turks, and the companies that did lobbying for that tax holiday, as they call it, corporations are apparently so much of people that they even get to take vacations, including tax vacations, although you actual human beings don't get tax vacations, they do. But that tax vacation or holiday, the amount of money that they spent on it, they got a 24,000% return on investment. So that's why they buy off these politicians. But they couldn't buy off Elizabeth Warren, and she's pointing out the facts. Now, Lamar Alexander is from Tennessee, where FedEx is a huge center. and he voted for the bill. He's a Republican. Corker, same thing, has also gotten a lot of money from FedEx. They both have. So conveniently, they thought, no, we'll take FedEx's word against the facts. When asked to explain himself, Lamar Alexander said the GOP tax bill takes, quote, the handcuffs off job creators to grow the economy. Well, there were no handcuffs on them to begin with. The corporations have run amok. They make incredible profits. FedEx and UPS have billions of dollars stored away. They're not creating any jobs with it. And when we looked into their so-called plans to create jobs, we found out they're actually automating things and will reduce jobs. Lamar Alexander said, yes, but did my check clear? Okay, he didn't say that part. That's me reading into his intentions. Now, they point out, here are facts again from TYT Investigates. Alexander has taken $68,300 in campaign contributions from FedEx during his political career. Gee, I wonder if that had something to do with it. Okay, on the other hand, one more fact from this story that I find really interesting. Look for all this information at youtube.com/TYT Investigates, and also, of course, on our website, tytnetwork.com. So, and whenever we do a story, guys, whether it's our own story or other stories, we'll usually have the link to the article in the description box below. So, they also found out that Steve Cohen, who's also from Tennessee, but a very progressive Democrat, has taken a little bit more money than Lamar Alexander. And Alexander is a senator. Cohen is just a congressman, but he took about $69,000 from FedEx. So normally in politics, when that happens, the politician, whether a Democrat or Republican, will find a reason to say, oh yeah, I think FedEx does a great job anyway. Yay, let's vote for the tax bill that they want. But credit to Steve Cohen, because he did not do that. Here's his quote. The massive corporate tax cut comes with no promise that companies will create jobs and no prohibition that it won't be transferred to stockholders as dividends. FedEx is one of Memphis' largest employers, a boon to the Memphis economy, and makes a great effort to give back to the community. But the bill should at least have incentives for companies to create jobs. Otherwise, it is just what I've called it from the start, a massive gift to the 1%. Hey, we found a politician that's honest. So, you know what? Just when you thought it wasn't possible. All right, great reporting by TYT Investigates, and great to see that it's having an effect. And as always, thanks to the Young Turks viewers who made that team possible. Okay, now, last story for you guys. This was just fun, okay? So we covered the 2016 elections together here at the Young Turks, and a lot of different hosts were involved, and Jimmy Dore was among them. Jimmy does a great show on the network. You should check it out. The Jimmy Dore Show, of course, you can find it on YouTube. You can find it as part of the TYT Network. There's another host on the TYT Network. It's Con Kolinsky. He hosts Secular Talk, another great show. Please check that out. We'll have links down below to both those. In fact, we also have links at this eye. If you move your mouse to the eye in the corner of your video, if you're watching on YouTube, that also has the links. If you're watching on Facebook, the links will be in the comment section. Anyway, Kyle sends me an email just a couple of days ago saying, hey Cenk, did you see this old clip from October of 2015? I said, no, Kyle, I hadn't. He's like, you're gonna wanna see what you and Jimmy bet on. And I was like, ooh, I think I do wanna see that. So Jimmy was convinced that Trump couldn't win the election. Now, to be fair to Jimmy, he's a great guy, love the guy, okay? In October of 2015, Jimmy was not alone. Nobody thought that Trump could win the election. The primary voting had not even begun yet. They began voting in January. So all that has happened in October of 2015 is some of the Republican debates. So we had just covered one together because we do all those debates live here on the Young Turks. And we were doing analysis when this happened. You guys have talked me into increasing the Trump's chances of winning. Okay. No, you keep underestimating
10-1. I'll give you 10-1 on Trump right now.
Oh my God. I will take it. Finally. Yeah. Okay. He's been saying this all show long for 3 hours.
I'll give you $100 I win, $1,000 to you.
Really, you're gonna give me $1,000?
Yes.
Nomination or general election? He wins.
General election, what are we talking about?
Okay. Okay, I'm going to be a man of my word, and I'm going to make that bet. What can I do? I'm a man of my word. So now I explained why I thought that was. Now the other guys were saying no, he's got no chance, and the more they said it, the more I thought he had a chance. Now, as you'll see in this explanation, not all the details about the policies came to fruition, but the general idea was right, that people were underestimating Trump's chance of winning because politics is actually simpler than people realize. Anyway, here we are back in October of 2015. Here was the conversation. That's it. I'm moving him up to 12.5% chance of winning. The whole thing. I had him at 0 for the nomination. I had him at 1% for the nomination. I had him at 5% for the nomination. Tonight I'm moving him up to 12.5%, not for the nomination, but for the general election. Okay, this Republicans love alpha males. The guy is keep it simple, stupid, okay? He keeps it simple. So that kind of braggadocio, clear bully that you hate, John, lack of intellect, lack of any substance, they love. You're underestimating Donald Trump's ability to change all of his positions. He has no principle, he has no shame. Donald Trump is super right-wing on a lot of things now. And then when it comes to general election, he'd be like, what do you mean? Yeah. Of course, for Latinos, again. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna increase food stamps. I'm gonna give Latinos free education. Who cares?
He doesn't care. I just want to win.
He doesn't care. He doesn't care, right? They're like, hey, listen, I'm talking about bad guy immigrants. I'm keeping them out so I can give the good guy immigrants here, Latinos in the country, everything they want. Chicken in every pot.
I'm horrified.
He has no shame.
You're right. You're right.
And by the way, a third of his positions are far more progressive than the Republican positions.
Yes.
So he can come out and say, hey, wait, I'm the guy who wants to increase taxes on hedge funds. What? And Hillary Clinton said during the debates that she represents Wall Street. Nah, he didn't do all that, but he did a lot of it. Okay, so what were my two principal theses? Keep it simple, stupid. Republicans are not that bright. They'll like the alpha male that's keeping it simple. And Trump has no shame or no principles, and that'll help him win. I'm not saying told you, except for the graphic next to me that says told you. Even down to him saying, oh yeah, I'll take away the hedge fund tax breaks. Just today, it is confirmed that even though he did say that in the campaign, he will not be taking away the tax breaks for hedge fund guys. Why? Because he has no shame. He knew that he just needed to win. He didn't actually need to deliver on any of those promises. So I'm gonna ask for your help here on how much I should make Jimmy pay. Okay, but before I do, because I'm the most reasonable man in America, I want to show you the very end of that clip, and we'll have the link to the whole clip down below as well. Look at what, so we go through a 10-minute explanation, and then Jimmy at the end panics a little bit and says this. Like now you're getting a little scared, right?
Yeah, I'm getting a little scared. Well, after all, they called him 5-1.
So he joked about 5-1. So let's go to the public here. Let's go to you guys, and you help me decide. That picture of Jimmy's awesome. TYTnetwork.com/thebet. How much should Cenk make Jimmy pay? $1,000, because that was the bet, $100 for 10-1 bet. That's the one we shook on. $500, because at the end, Jimmy said 5-1, okay? Or C, come on, that was all in good fun. Let him go, let him go. Don't make him pay you. Now, I think I'm gonna do whatever you guys say, okay? So this poll actually matters. Of all the polls we've ever done, this probably will have the most effect. And Jimmy will probably vote 1,000 times. So outvote him, okay? I know which one I'm gonna vote for. Look, we'll see if you guys are, which way you come out on it. I will tell you this, if Trump had lost, would I have given Jimmy the $100? Absolutely, right? So your call, and I'm not looking for a pound of flesh. Overall, nothing but fun. And Jimmy's great. Check out his show. You're gonna have nothing but fun. He was raging during the elections. He's still raging today because he's right about that. All right, we'll be right back. back on a Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, John, I'd roll with you guys. Johnny Pie. John, I had blueberry pie in honor of you yesterday at breakfast. Okay?
Thank you.
That had nothing to do with you.
At breakfast?
At breakfast, yes.
You eat like me these days.
No, you know what I had? We should save this for old school / the post game.
I guess it's fruit.
But I had a blueberry pie, 2 sunny side up eggs, and a scoop of cranberry tuna.
Oh, God, what the hell?
Mind blown.
You know, just as I was set to be disgusted by the last thing you said, I thought, you know what, is this crazy? Like an egg on top of blueberry pie? Might not be so bad.
I thought you were going to go with an egg on top of tuna. And that I think could be interesting as well.
Maybe.
I'm going to play around with it, see what happens. Anyway, Brian Newton writes in about the clip we showed you that had our coverage from 2015. John was right to be horrified. I remember that conversation.
Yeah, I saw that tweet, but I didn't know what that was in reference to.
When Jimmy and I made the bet, and you were horrified that Trump had any chance of winning because he was such a buffoon.
Those were good days.
Back when
it was still pretty early on.
Back when we thought it was absolutely outrageous that I thought he had a 12.5% chance of winning.
Yeah, which of course came before every pundit always knew Trump was going to win. It's weird how everybody called it.
Right. And then one last one. I'm a Derpy Panda writes in about
I love that name.
Yes. About the tax vacations and the tax holidays that the corporations got back in 2004 and they're getting again now. Writing in, real human beings don't even get regular vacations, otherwise bye-bye job, let alone tax vacations.
Wait,
okay.
Did you talk about the tax bill in the first hour?
No, only in passing. Only.
Okay, good. I was going to say, man, you really undercut this first segment. I got all this tax shit.
Yeah. No, we're coming to it.
Okay.
And then members of the day are Kyle Kissinger and Amanda Gatke. Thank you guys. We got a great post game for you guys.
In the audience.
Yeah, we do.
Interesting.
Yes. We got a great post game for you guys today. Talk about a little bit more of the stuff that was in the news that didn't make it in the show that I think are really important and fun stories. And Rebel headquarters tonight, right after the Young Turks at 8:05 Eastern. We're going to have 2 guys likely to be in Congress next year. One already is, Ro Khanna, and he's actually...
Is he coming in?
No, he's going to come in January, but he's on Skype today. Cool. And then Colonel Applegate, who almost beat Issa and will likely win. There was actually an interesting story about him in the news recently. I want to ask him about that too.
Did you see the Nevada news? Nevada news, I know I always say that wrong. I forget his name.
Hewitt.
Yeah, isn't running again.
Oh yeah, I know. We got a.
Oh, okay.
Amy Villela is going to.
No, that's why I mentioned it. Yeah,
Amy Villela is going to take that seat for the Just Democrats.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned it.
So justdemocrats.com/win, by the way, to donate overall. And if you want to take action, justdemocrats.com/WOFA. Get off your sofa. Let's do some WOFA. Fun for everybody. All right. And one last thing for you guys. Of course, as we thank the members for allowing us to be able to do all these shows. We do have a gift program now because of the holidays. So you can give the gift of TYD to someone else or to yourself secretly. $25 gets you 3 months of membership. Have them check it out and see if they like it. We think they'll love it, but it's a nice little program, tytnetwork.com/gift, okay? All right, John, what's next?
Okay, the big story of the day. Today is tax bill day and the GOP's rightfully hated legislation has already passed the House. Although it's going to have to do so again because it turned out about an hour and a half ago, the parliamentarian decided that there were several problems with the bill. Its name was inaccurate, as Bernie Sanders pointed out, so they're going to have to fix that. And there's also some issues with a couple of components of the bill that don't necessarily have anything to do with the budget, reconciliation process that they are using to move this through with only 51 votes rather than 60. So there's a couple of small technical changes. The bill will be re-voted on tomorrow, but it's expected that that will then pass. But anyway, tonight we also have the Senate voting on it, and that's where people's hopes to stop the bill sort of remain. But we do know at least what is in this final version of the bill because it has now been voted on by the House. So we have those final details here, which we'll talk about. And the entire thing is still shrouded in all of this controversy over especially the Corker amendment, the fact that many individuals like Corker, I believe 16 other senators, and of course President Trump are gonna make a ton of money because this new addition to the bill specifically aids people who have large real estate holdings but very few employees, which is supposed to be the exact opposite of how tax incentives work. It's supposed to benefit trying to get economic activity working. This seems to benefit just people who aren't really helping the economy much at all. But it is there.
Can I just say how proud I am of David Sirotto, who's a TYT contributor. Thanks to you guys, the Young Turks audience paid for our reporters and contributors. And he wrote it for the IB Times and then talked about it on the Young Turks. He broke that story completely, utterly. It was him, he found it. He found the difference. He asked Corker about it. Corker's answers were wildly inconsistent, and now, so. Yeah, and remain so. And now, everybody's calling out the Republicans for what is a clear giveaway, not only to Corker but to Trump, to Kushner, and to a lot of the Republicans that were on there. And they tried to sneak it in, and they couldn't. And in the old days with just TV, they would have easily gotten away with it. But with the internet, with all these great reporters out there, they were caught red-handed.
Yeah, and we're gonna have a similar sort of one, the fact that one of the things in this bill that remains is the carried interest tax loophole, which they've been talking about for so long that they're gonna get rid of. Even Trump said they're gonna get rid of it. And we're not gonna go into super big details because I think we've talked about it on the show before, but the basic idea is that if you are managing investment money, you get a certain fee based on the size of the fund, and you also get a percentage of the profits that are earned on that fund. And the way that the law is right now, you're taxed at a higher percentage on that first part than the second part. And the reason historically that carried interest is taxed at a lower rate is the idea is it's supposed to encourage people to be willing to invest more of their own money. But the people who are managing these funds, it's not their money. There's no risk to their capital whatsoever. So it makes no sense that is taxed at such a smaller percentage, significantly lower amounts. And that's why it's one of the iconic tax loopholes that they've been talking about closing for a very long time. But it's still in the bill. And although we have other elements of this bill that we want to talk about, I want to show you video with Representative Brady, a Republican, who is going to attempt to do some mental jujitsu to get you to move on from the fact that this totally unnecessary tax loophole remains in the bill.
Look, carried interest, we can talk about that for the next hour if you'd like. But for most Americans, they could care less about that. They care about their paychecks and getting the economy going. And frankly, I've got a college son as well, about making sure they have a good paying job when they're done with school.
We can hold both of these thoughts in our head at the same time, that some middle class Americans will get a tax break. But what about carried interest here? Because as you know, this goes to very wealthy people here in New York who make a lot of money. Why is it still in the bill?
Well, I'll tell you this, again, a 3-year holding period to make sure hedge funds aren't using and flipping these, making sure that you have to have capital at risk, that you hold it a long period of time, and that you work to grow it. All that is the reasoning behind it. But again, perfect example, I think, of why Washington and New York get caught up in all these ancillary issues and forget the big picture here.
So nothing in what Sleepy Lex Luthor just said actually explains why they can't raise the taxes on that portion of. It's still not your money. It's not your money.
So let me go into more detail. So I kind of like his answer because he's saying, look, regular people don't know about this, so hush up.
We could talk about that for an hour. Well, I'd like to. No.
So he's saying basically, there's a giveaway to our donors, and we don't think that the average American understands it, so we're just gonna sneak it in. Yeah. He can't defend it. All he can say is regular Americans don't know about it, so please be quiet, and that's why they don't care about it. So I'm just gonna fill in what John said a little bit more so you understand. So if I give my money for a hedge fund to invest, and they make me let's say I give them $100 and they made me $20 through their investments. Well, nice job on the investments, and I got 20 extra bucks. The government wants to incentivize for me to invest, and so they're gonna let me pay a lower taxes on that 20 bucks. Now, the reality is rich people don't need any incentive to invest. You make money by investing. And Warren Buffett has said this so many times. It's a preposterous claim that, oh no, if you don't give tax incentives, rich people will just sit on their money and do nothing. No, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
But this is an extra layer of absurdity. The hedge fund, who did not risk any money, they took my money and invested it for me, they'd make 20% of the profits, okay? And that's because that's their job to invest, and they're saying part of how I'm gonna get compensated is taking 20% of the money I made for you.
And it theoretically incentivizes them to invest wisely so there will be more profits.
It incentivizes them to invest wisely, but that's their job.
Yes.
Okay, so that it is in essence a salary for them, a wage for them. They are not risking any of their own money as an investment. So they are not. It does not spur any investment. All it does is have a tax break for hedge fund guys. And some of them do a great job, some of them do a bad job, but they get compensated richly for it.
Yeah.
They don't need an extra tax break, and one that has nothing to do with the stated purpose of creating more investments. Yeah. So that's why Kevin Brady cannot defend it. It is the real estate break of that Bob Corker wanted was a giveaway to some of the politicians because they happen to hold a lot of real estate. And of course to some of their donors. The hedge fund one, remember, Trump promised very clearly on the campaign trail that he would take this away. He was lying, and now they are not taking it away, and it is strictly for the benefit of their donors.
I only mention this because in the end of the last hour, you played a prediction. I don't often make predictions, and when I do, they're wrong. But after a debate, always, after a debate, when he said he would get rid of that, and he was getting all this credit as being different as the other Republicans on taxes, I said it would not happen. But I don't want to go find that. That seems complicated. But anyway, it's apparently not going to happen. And I wish that we could go to more of the video because Brady both also goes on Scarborough and again tries to sort of run interference on this entire thing. And remember, after all, one of the big problems that the Republicans have is that this thing adds so much to the deficit and eventually to the national debt. And like this is an easy win. It fulfills a campaign promise to get rid of it, and it would make the financial impact to the federal government not as grievous if they were to do this. But of course, as Cenk points out, they want what their donors want, not to be consistent with their campaign promises, even though this would be an easy one. And it would mean that when they go on cable news shows and the host says, "Can you name one loophole that you're closing?" they would finally have an answer. But they're not even going to do it for that reason. Now, there are some other things that you should probably know about this. A little bit of good news, a little bit of bad news. The good news is if you're interested in electric vehicles, which are the future, the federal tax credit for those is back in this version of the bill. It hadn't been in some of the previous ones, but there's bad stuff as well. Directly affecting TYT, companies can no longer deduct the cost of free food provided to employees. So we're screwed at lunchtime, I guess, when it comes to snacks. You can no longer subsidize the commuting expenses of your employees because after all, the food and the commuting, that helps the workers. Screw them. Let's see, you have carried interest. Interestingly, churches will not be able to openly endorse candidates. That had been in previous versions of the bill, it's no longer in it. But one of the biggest things, you talked about the tax holidays, is that is in this in a big way. So money held abroad, which is being kept away, it's basically tax evasion. It's not being brought back to be taxed at 35%, is gonna be able to come back at one of two different rates, and I love this. If it's real estate, it comes back at 8%. So again, that's a way that, yeah, you're benefiting people like maybe Corker if he's in international holdings, but certainly Donald Trump, and cash and stock at 15.5%. And they will say that, look, this is gonna raise money for the government, but this also sends another unnecessary signal to corporations. Just park your money abroad, don't pay corporate taxes on it, and someday when we get in power, we'll do another tax holiday and you can effectively get it back almost for free. That's what happened back in 2004. We've analyzed ad nauseum the effects of it. It didn't help the economy, it didn't spur hiring, and now they're doing it again.
Yeah, so I'm most devastated by the snacks portion of this.
Yeah, no, but I love it because it's so petty. Anything that's going to affect actual workers, like for instance, when they made it that your relocation expenses, if you have to move to get a job, they were gonna take away the ability to write those off. Anything that affects actual workers, they don't care about that, they're not gonna include it. They want to help the corporation, not the people that actually make the corporation able to function.
Yeah, I don't think Kohler and I have ever had a discussion of what do you think our deduction is going to be on these potato chips?
But over the course of a year, it could be significant. And in a tight economy, it could lead corporations to start cutting back the very few things that make life less soul crushing in this country, like free ramen.
We got no free ramen here.
We at one point did have ramen, actually.
Oh, did we did?
Yeah, not recently.
I definitely did not.
It's been rough times, but at one point we did.
I did not authorize that. But in all seriousness, the main point here is the one that John's making is really, really important, which is that they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar on some of these things. Like the teachers used to be able to deduct $250 for supplies for the kids, right? That they're buying out of the goodness of their heart. They shouldn't have to do that. We should provide for our own kids in these public schools. So it's so small. It was so gratuitous.
So
it was
petty.
A slap across the face of the average worker and the teacher and our kids, right? So once they got caught doing that, they're like, oh, yeah, all right, put it back in, right? Doesn't really make a difference anyway. We're just trying to rub it in their face.
And no, they're not going to buy the supplies. They're just going to let you write off $250 of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tiny,
you still have to spend the money. You just don't get taxed on it in the same way.
Right, but the private jet loophole survives.
Yeah.
So they get giant loopholes on the carried interest, which goes to the hedge fund guys, the real estate stuff, that goes to Trump and Corker and the other guys. Giant loopholes on private jets, so the rich win, and win more. And now the bill, there's all sorts of polling out on it, deeply unpopular, 55 opposed, 33 in favor. For a bill that only has 33% approval, that should be dead on arrival if we lived in a democracy.
Yeah.
Then people would go, whoa, I'm gonna lose my job. That's so unpopular. I don't wanna do that. But we don't live in a democracy, and all these so-called representatives care about is their donors. That's why this bill is designed exactly for them and at your expense.
Yeah, and by the way, it's been growing less popular as the last month has gone by. It is very difficult to come up with legislation that will be less popular than Donald Trump, but they've found a way. So that's why it's important that people talk about this, and the social media opposition of the tax bill has been so significant. One other thing that's in the bill, because it totally has to do with taxes, they're going to allow drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. So although we stopped for 40 years, we stopped them from drilling there. Got through George W. Bush, Obama never touched it. With a Trump win, now they're going to be drilling in there. And the terrible thing is that theoretically, some of these changes, in 4 or 8 years, you get a progressive, you change them. I think people have been fooling themselves about how easy it'll be, but it could happen. But once you drill the Antwar, once you take out the resources, once you mine national landmarks, you can't unmine them. You can't undrill them. That stuff is forever, and this bill is going to make it possible.
Well, that's exactly what's wrong with the Trump presidency, because some of the damage he does, you cannot undo. A lot of it has to do with climate change, but that's not all. And if he starts a war, you also can't undo that. So tick tock, tick tock.
Yeah. Do you want to turn to this other quick angle on this? I know that you had some quotes ready.
Oh, yeah, I did, didn't I? Yes, I definitely want to.
Could you get video 16 ready? We're going to do that right now. So obviously, one of the big criticisms of this bill is that it seems like the Republicans, who always say they care about deficits, suddenly don't care so much if they're willing to completely unnecessarily throw a $1.5 trillion hole in the deficit. And so Grover Norquist was asked about this. Let's see what his response was.
Deficit numbers are all bogus. No one has any idea what they are until they are what they are. But it is pretty incredible that in a country where Republicans say they're so obsessed with the deficit, they're willing to pass a plan that adds $1.5 trillion to it, if it's even accurate. Thank you.
We're obsessed with growth. You're obsessed with the deficit. Growth is what
actually,
we want.
I mean, I can go through books written by people in the GOP who are obsessed with the deficit and the debt in this country. It's been like the single biggest thing, at least when Democrats were in power. Even the president's pointed out Barack Obama's debt record.
So Grover Norquist, obviously his massive, historic hypocrisy pointed out there, and yet he smiles. And why does he smile? Not because he was caught in a lie, but because he's about to get a gigantic ass tax break and he doesn't care if you call him a hypocrite.
Yeah, and a huge pay raise probably. So if you don't know Grover Norquist, he's the president of Americans for Tax Reform. They're the epicenter for donors who are looking for tax cuts. So they fund the so-called think tank, where they think really hard and decide, yeah, rich people should get a bigger tax cut. And so then their so-called papers and reports are used by congressmen to justify what their donors want in the first place. Oh, they say here at Americans for Tax Reform that, yes, well, look at that. My donors should get tax cuts, shouldn't they? And so, but the entire time, the guys like Norquist have been talking about, well, they're deficits. And now, all of a sudden, what did I tell you? We told you guys before the election, we've been saying it now for close to a decade. Republicans don't care about deficits. In fact, we found an old memo where Nixon's team said, hey, remember, run up deficits when Republicans are in charge because it grows the economy. And then when Democrats get in charge, make sure that you keep complaining about the deficit, so they make the mistake of not growing the economy, which will help us defeat them later in elections. So that is their strategy. Erin Burnett, I've never seen her actually do that good a follow-up question. I'm not sure I've ever seen a follow-up question. So I'm not a big fan of Erin Burnett. I remember that during Occupy Wall Street, how derisive she was. So she's nobody's progressive, not at all, okay? Even she goes, wait a minute now. I've been on here for quite some time, and all anybody ever talked about on the Republican side was deficits when the Democrats were in charge. Now you get into office and all of a sudden they don't matter at all. We're gonna add a $1.5 trillion. If Obama had done that, they'd be talking about impeachment, right? Now Norquist comes out there, deficits? Who said deficits? I'll give you at least one example. The guy who wrote this tax plan is Paul Ryan. And here's what he had said before they unveiled the plan. He said, it's going to be deficit neutral. That's the budget rules we use, which is called the Byrd Rule. Later, they decided, no, it's not going to be deficit neutral. We don't care about deficits. We were lying all along. We're going to blow a huge hole in our deficit and add trillions to our debt. So that's the current Republican plan because they never cared. So great job by Erin Burnett there in at least calling out Grover Norquist.
Yeah.
All right, we got to take a quick break, guys. Now, when we come back, Trump's changes on climate change. What they're doing at the EPA, unbelievable.
But some good news coming out of it.
But
thanks to, again, the power of journalism. So we had Sirota, now we have this.
All right, we'll tell you all about it when we come back. Here at TYT headquarters, we are building independent media. We're literally building it, it's not done yet. I've got a great offer for you guys, 3 months of membership for just $25. You can gift it to friends and family. This is a good time to gift things, as you can tell, because I'm wearing a Santa hat. Help us build independent media and hold the establishment accountable with just $25. This is not $25. It's a lovely JFK gold coin, which I will now eat.
Been easy for me. I started off in Brooklyn. My father gave me a small loan of $1 million. All my life, I was told no.
He said I had small hands. They're not small, are they? I never heard that one before.
Hey, Cenk, what's up?
Aaron, I want to do a YouTube live clip, but not live. Go. All right, back on TYT. Daniel Pareja writes in, it's for the benefit of GOP donors, and also isn't Chelsea Clinton's husband a hedge fund guy? Well, I'm not sure. He's in finance. I'm not sure he works for a hedge fund. I don't think he does. No, he doesn't. I think he works for VC/private equity, which is a little different. But guys, look, I've said it a million times. It's not personal, and it's not everybody who works in finance are bad guys. Some of my best friends are bankers. It's actually kind of literal. But anyway, and I know a guy who works at a hedge fund, and he thinks the carried interest rule is preposterous, and he doesn't follow it. Yeah. Okay, pays full taxes. Yeah. So, and I know that that's a rare situation.
He just willingly doesn't follow it.
He willingly pays full taxes.
Idiot.
well, you know, his fellow finance people would say that.
I think bankers are fine people who should be taxed at 39.6% for their
exactly.
investment income.
No, but that's exactly right. That's my point. It's not that bankers are bad people, but why do they get special rules we don't get? That's preposterous.
Yeah.
And you know why? Because some of them, a lot of them, give money to politicians. If they just paid their normal taxes and followed the normal rules, you need bankers in the world. Yes, it's a thing that is necessary. So anyway, so Chris writes in, Donald Trump lied about something. Huh? Wouldn't have expected it. Strange world we live in. That's why you should buy Stranger Times, which is a shirt we have at shoptyt.com.
We should make a Stranger Times season 2 shirt.
Oh, we should. Maybe for Trump's second term. Oh no.
Why would you say that? I'm putting him at 12.5%.
No, don't do it. Don't do it.
Will you give me odds? No.
Yeah, I will give you odds.
Yeah,
let's not do that again. Okay, so by the way, happy holidays. That's the code you need to use, both to spite Bill O'Reilly and because it'll get you 20% off at shoptyt.com.
I like that little one. Of course, I have gifts. I like that.
Yes, I was wearing that one, the green version of that for our holiday party. Okay, finally, Matt Strackbine says, why is Representative Brady so gleeful? He can't even hide it. Absolutely right. He looks like he caught a bird, man. He
just everything he wanted.
Yeah, he
might lose his seat, but
yeah,
got what he wanted.
Yep, and so did his donors. All right, what's next, John?
Yes, more big news, and this is long-term scary news. Yesterday, the Trump administration put out their national security strategy document. It's a 65-page document. I've actually got a copy of it right here. And this is outlining their national security priorities having to do with everything, including the possibility of large-scale international war, cybercrime, bioterrorism, a number of different things. It even gets into tax policy. That's how they define security. And so the weird thing that worries me as a progressive who cares about the environment is that in this whole big thing, all this discussion about the different threats that we face as a country, you literally cannot find the terms climate change or global warming. They don't exist inside of that document. And we know the state of the world. We know what's coming in the next few years, in the next few decades. And so that seems like a bit of a hole. And so let's talk about where they get into territory where a rational administration would talk about climate change. Instead, they have references to things like this. US leadership is indispensable to countering an anti-growth energy agenda that is detrimental to US economic and energy security interests. What is an anti-growth energy agenda? That is things like the Paris Climate Accords that want countries around the world to band together and make small changes to the way they generate energy, the way they run their economy to maintain the security of our entire country and civilization. And they're gonna be against that. They go on to say this, given future global energy demand, much of the developing world will require fossil fuels, as well as other forms of energy to power their economies and lift their people out of poverty. So no, we're not going to be aiding in other countries, switching to renewable energy or anything like that. That will not be a priority. And then back here, access to domestic sources of clean, affordable, and reliable energy underpins a prosperous, secure, and powerful America for decades to come. And that part I agree with, which is why we should switch over to renewable forms of energy like solar and wind, geothermal, wave energy, all of those things. But that's not what they're talking about there. They're talking about natural gas, clean coal, and oil.
So what's more disturbing than the fact that climate change doesn't exist in that document, John, is that it used to. So including all the way up to Defense Secretary General Mattis, Mad Dog Mattis thought that climate change is a security threat that the Department of Defense should take seriously. But now that he's the head of the Department of Defense, Trump has told him, no, we serve our oil company donors.
Well, yeah, Jay, he technically said that, but he said that a long time ago, back during his confirmation hearings at the beginning of this year. He said specifically that climate change is impacting stability in areas of the world where our troops are operating today. It's one of the reasons why the Pentagon needs to be concerned about it, that it is a threat multiplier. It makes already unstable and uncertain and dangerous situations far worse.
And in fact, there's actually a really interesting theory about how one of the factors that caused the Syrian civil war was drought. And it was the mass movements that unsettled the government. Now, it's not the only reason for that. War, of course, is a confluence of events, but that is why the Defense Department, until Trump started to do political correctness and propaganda for the benefit of his donors and not for the benefit of our national security, started going in there and mangling our national security interests. Until then, the Defense Department and the Pentagon recognized that these were serious issues and thought, hey, we need to be concerned, both as it directly affects our troops all across the world, where they're stationed, both in terms of how climate change affects them, but climate change also how it affects the countries that they're in and the political and economic and socioeconomic conditions that it creates, which will then affect not just our troops, but our national security overall in protecting the country. That was the intelligent course of action that they took based on the conclusions that our military reached and our scientists reached.
Yeah.
But no more.
No.
Now, the donors say there is no climate change, so it has been wiped away from the Pentagon and their list of concerns.
Exactly, and it's not just that you could take seriously, as a threat to both us as Americans, but also us as humans, because it's not a problem that's simply going to be constrained to any one state or another. It is a worldwide problem. But they even go farther to this, an area where they don't need to attack those who want to do something to stop the worst effects of global climate change, and say this: the United States will remain a global leader in reducing traditional pollution, that sounds good, as well as greenhouse gases, while expanding our economy, clarifying that those gains won't be due to onerous regulation. They think that simply free market innovation and technology, that's gonna be all it takes. As if there's no place for government to help invest and subsidize those sorts of technology to get them off the ground. No, we can give subsidies to oil companies to add carbon to the atmosphere, but we can't give subsidies to companies that are working to take some of it out or forestall more going into the atmosphere.
Yeah, so you guys know what's going on here, and even Trump's own cabinet knows what's going on here, but they're willfully ignoring it at the request of the people who pay them.
Yeah, now obviously there's much more in this that we can return to later on in the week if you want, but there is a lot of other news that we do have to get to today. I'm gonna switch on to the next topic though. This week, Mother Jones had a really interesting report. It's a profile of how the EPA had recently hired a right-wing opposition research firm to help track the media for them. So here's a section describing how this process went. Earlier this month, Scott Pruitt, obviously the head of the EPA, office inked a no-bid $120,000 contract with Definers Corporation, a Virginia-based public relations firm founded by Matt Rhodes, who managed Mitt Romney's 2012 presidential campaign. So that's one guy there. Other higher-ups at Definers include former RNC research director Joe Pounder, who's been described as a, quote, master of opposition research, and senior vice president Colin Reed, an Oppo research guru billed as among the leaders of the war on Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Must be so proud.
He must be quite proud. Odd, though, that they would be chosen to do media research and curation for the EPA in a no bid. There was no competition or anything like that. They simply chose these guys. Again, no bid from the party that loves the free market, supposedly. So what else is Definers? Well, Definers also specializes in using the press and social media to validate your narrative. That's not me saying that or Mother Jones saying that. That's Definers saying that, to validate a narrative, which is obvious what a science and evidence-based organization like the EPA is looking for. Now, since that initial report not long ago, we've got more information about what Definer might do once they get this contract, once they're working for the EPA. The New York Times reported that a vice president for Definer, Alan Bluestein, has submitted at least 40 Freedom of Information requests in the last year. Many of the requests targeted EPA staffers and union representatives who have questioned the way Pruitt has run the agency. And so he's using Freedom of Information Act requests to try to get information about people who are rocking the boat and aren't simply going along with this new radical direction of the EPA. In addition to targeting agency staff, he's also filed open records requests in various states for climate scientists' emails at public universities.
Jesus.
So they're trying to weed out opposition inside of the EPA and also crush any sort of information coming out of academics and scientists, environmental lawyers, activists, all of that sort of thing. But there has been a lot of, thankfully, because of Mother Jones and eventually New York Times reporting on this, there's been a lot of public outcry about this ridiculous change. And thankfully, an agency spokesman confirmed earlier today that the EPA and the company had agreed to terminate the contract. That's good news, but one last thing. Look at the way that the company described this. Joe Pounder said, Definers offered EPA a better and more efficient news clipping service that would give their employees real-time news at a lower cost than what previous administrations paid for. But it's become clear this will become a distraction. So maybe we were freaking out for nothing. Maybe they were just cutting viral GIFs for them.
I'm sure. So I know one of the guys in the story. I know Joe Pounder. And
really?
Yeah, and you know where I know him from? I was on a panel with him at the Web Summit, and we actually had dinner together before as well.
Oh, Lord.
And
is he gonna be doing media research for us?
No, he will not. So he is what they say he is. He's an Oppo research guy, and he doesn't hide that. So you hire Joe Pounder if you want research against your opponents. In this case, the opponents were the people and the scientists that work at the Environmental Protection Agency.
Yeah.
So if that's not haunting to you, you're not getting it. So it's Trump's team going in there and going, number one, we're gonna do political correctness. Here are the words that are not allowed. That's a story we covered in regards to the CDC yesterday, but it's also been reported about at the EPA. At the CDC, they're not allowed to use words like science-based and evidence-based.
Are you sure we're allowed to say those anymore? Maybe we should check.
Yeah, I thought these guys were for the First Amendment, but I guess that only applies to corporations and to right-wing speakers on college campuses. Anyway, so then you hire a guy like Pounder to go in there and find out who your political opponents are inside the EPA, and you know what the next step is. Once you found them, they're goners.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in this case, the people who they think are their opponents are the ones that are actually agree with 97% of the world's scientists and are actually looking to protect the environment.
Yeah, radicals.
Yeah, once you've weeded those guys out, who's left? Well, just the political animals.
Yeah. And by the way, like I know this is sort of ancient history at this point and it's been proceeding at a slightly different pace, but I remember back at, I think the RNC, the news broke that Chris Christie, who was supposed to be in charge of the transition, said that they were gonna go into these federal departments and not replace the top 10% the way you normally have when an administration comes into effect, but to replace 90%. And we talked about it then and said that that's radical, that's a crazy break with the norms of the past. Now they may not have immediately done that, but we know that they're not filling seats at the Department of State. And if they're hiring opposition research firms to help weed out political opponents inside of places like the EPA, God only knows what other organizations are suffering from this sort of thing.
And remember, look, every administration gets to put their guys at the top. We get that, right? But 90% of the people in any building, the State Department, EPA, et cetera, are supposed to be the professionals. This is their job. In the case of the EPA, these are the guys who are paid to protect the environment, meaning we don't want, put aside climate change, you don't want your kids getting poisoned, right? You don't want the stream next to your house to have toxic chemicals in it, and that's the job of the EPA to make sure that your kids aren't being poisoned, and the air, the water, et cetera, and climate change is a part of it. Now, if the companies that are putting the poison in the stream are the ones paying off the donors, and those are the guys who they come in and they fire the scientists and they replace 90% of the people, not with professionals, but with political hacks. Well, then you're not going to protect the environment. And you're not going to do any of the things that the government needs to do to protect its citizens.
Yeah.
Because they don't serve us anymore. Look, I know that it's tiring to hear the same thing over and over again, but unfortunately, especially in the case of these Republicans and Trump, they have just they've made the swamp so much larger, so much swampier.
Yeah.
And they've just thrown away any semblance of serving the public. They get financed by private interests and they serve those private interests.
Yeah.
And for them to, and then they make a mockery of it by doing these no-bid contracts. There was a panic at the EPA, to fire scientists? So you needed to make sure that only one company could get that contract. Why? Because it wasn't an open bid on who's going to do a better job of serving the EPA. They wanted to hire the one company who would go after their political opponent, or what they perceived to be their political opponents, including scientists at the EPA.
Exactly.
So that's what this Trump administration is about.
It's disgusting. Yeah, we get very rightfully focused on the ideological spectrum and where people fall in it, but there's a lot of other important spectrums, like the ability to have a department that functions, that follows science and evidence. Those are not strictly ideological things, but you see when you let someone like Trump in charge, everything starts to fall apart.
All right, guys, we're out of time. So remember, if you want to catch the whole show, commercial free, and all of our network shows, tytnetwork.com/gift for this limited period of time. $25 gets you 3 months of membership, and give it to friends and family over the holidays. And I've got Rebel Headquarters coming up next in the next 5 minutes. Ro Khanna, Colonel Applegate, who's going to beat Daryl Issa. So come and check that out. So bye-bye. All right, welcome to Rebel Headquarters, everybody. We got a great show ahead for you guys today. As I told you earlier on the Young Turks, make sure that you're getting involved in Weekend of Action. So that's justdemocrats.com/WOFA to either donate or to volunteer. We need, I think, 1,000 house parties. We're going to show you how to do that. So make sure that you get involved in that. And there's so many things going on from a progressive perspective, including the disastrous tax bill and the attack against net neutrality. So on today's show, we're going to have a couple of guests for you guys that I believe and hope will be United States congressmen by the year 2019. One of them also mission accomplished. That's Ro Khanna. We're going to talk to him in a second. And then a little bit later in the program, Doug Applegate, who's very likely to unseat Darrell Issa. I'm a little worried about jinxing him. I say it so often, but he's doing great in that race, and he's also a Just Democrat. All right, so without further ado, let's bring in Ro Khanna, the United States congressman from California, who is one of the thought leaders for progressives in the country. Ro, great to have you here at Rebel Headquarters.
Cenk, it's great to be back on your show. Congratulations on this new one. I've heard great things.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. So you tweeted earlier today about protesters being dragged away that were protesting the tax bill. Let me just quickly ask you about that. What happened in Congress there?
It was surreal. I was on the House floor, and you had a 26-year-old woman, really courageous, saying that she had stomach paralysis and that she would not get treatment for Medicare if these automatic cuts go through. And you had other protesters yelling, shame, the math doesn't add up, the bill needs to fail, the Congress is lying. And you saw this scene of security guards just escorting them out where members of Congress were, stone-faced sitting in the chamber. And I thought for the first time, this isn't the United States Congress, this is like the House of Lords. And I tweeted out about that. I mean, it was just a scene of people's discontent with the governing class.
Well, one can hardly blame him. So obviously you've got Donald Trump, who said that he would protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Obviously wasn't telling the truth about that, and this tax bill guts that. But also the larger issue, Congressman Khanna, is that this tax bill right now is polling at 33%. If we lived in a democracy, no one in their right mind would want to vote for a piece of legislation polling at 33%. Almost all the Republicans voted for the health care bill that was polling at 17%. So it seems, I mean, based on the scene that you're describing and what we see consistently, it doesn't look like we quite live in a democracy anymore.
Well, Cenk, you and I have discussed this, and I think this scene really brought it home for me. I mean, the frustration of people who know that 70%, 80% of them, of the public agrees with them. They don't want Medicare cuts. They don't want cuts in Social Security that are going to be triggered because of the sequestration agreement, that with these tax cuts next year, you already have Ryan and McConnell talking about the cuts to pay for them. And yet this is a number of, a minority of people who are in power and just ignoring their voices, frankly, not even letting them peacefully protest. I mean, they had a few seconds to make their point, and then security was whisking them away. And I was really thinking, I mean, if a historian was looking at that scene of those of us with privilege, because being in Congress, you have this ranked congressman and you're on the floor, and these ordinary folks just being hauled away, calling us, all of us, liars and fake numbers. It was just, it was a scene about a shameful day for our democracy. And, obviously every Democrat voted against this, but what I tell my Democratic friends is the anger is not just partisan. There's a sense that the governing class is out of touch with people.
Well, so that leads to a difficult question, Congressman Khanna, because you're right, and we talked about it on the Young Turks yesterday, which is the Democratic leadership is not going to ask for anything in a budget showdown. There's not going to be a budget showdown. They need Democratic votes in order to pass the budget. So it is a very rare situation where Democrats have leverage. I know that you have pushed for asking for three things in return. One was the DREAM Act, which is what Democratic leadership said they were going to fight for all along. Another is net neutrality, again, incredibly popular in the country. And the third is protecting Social Security and Medicare, what we were just talking about. All of those poll above 60%. So why won't Democrats, and you're fighting for it, but why doesn't Democratic leadership fight for any of these incredibly popular positions?
You know, it's a very fair question, and I don't understand it. I mean, look, my wife and son are away for Christmas, and I want to get back for Christmas as much as anyone in the holidays, but not at the expense of fundamental problems in our democracy and our country. And I'm prepared to stay till whatever time it takes. And I imagine most of my colleagues would be as well. So I don't understand what the rush is of getting us out of Congress and coming to some deal. I think we need to hold our ground. If it means staying through Christmas and staying through New Year's, fine. That's the job we all signed up to do. And we should make it clear we're not going to get a single Democratic vote until there is a clean DREAM Act, until there is repeal of net neutrality, and until there is protection for Medicare and Social Security. Even if we start with that, and if we get at least a clean DREAM Act, fine, then I'd say let's negotiate. But to get absolutely nothing, I don't understand why we would acquiesce. It's basically saying that we don't have any power.
And look, if it was just what I would phrase as laziness to want to get back home for the holiday break, yet another vacation for Congress, that would be less of a problem. I think the problem is bigger than that. I think that the donors don't want the markets disturbed. And if there's a budget showdown and the budget's not approved, even for a day or two, the markets will be disturbed. And so Democrats, not all obviously, because you're fighting for all these important things, but Democratic leadership has decided, let's not disturb the donors. I mean, look, you started a caucus inside the House for people who don't take PAC money. So shouldn't that be, I feel like if we lived in a democracy, that should be the whole House. Instead, it's tiny, right? What are you, is there 3 of you or 6 of you now?
Well, there are 6 of us. I'm hoping some of the new Justice Democrats, because I understand that they all commit to this in their platform. So I'm hoping there'll be more of us next cycle. But yeah, it's pretty self-evident that you shouldn't have to rely on corporate PACs and lobbyists. And frankly, Bernie Sanders showed that it doesn't have to be an electoral disadvantage. You can go and through hard work, get a lot of individuals in today's modern world to support you through social media, through the internet, through grassroots organizing. It takes more coffees in the local community than traditional fundraisers. But I think that's the model we need to be going to. And I agree that the donor class has way too much influence. The argument that some make is, well, the Democrats are a governing party and we need to govern and show that we can govern, which I agree with. But we also have to have some principles and some things which we're willing to fight over, or we're always going to be on the losing end of negotiations. And so I'm not saying that we should precipitate a shutdown. What I'm saying is it was promised by the president himself that we would resolve this dreamer situation. He wanted Congress to do it. It goes to our core value of who we are. And this is one of those times to make a stand.
So we'll have the links down below for petitions to get Democrats to fight on these issues. So make sure you click on that on the description box or the comment section. I want to ask one more substantive question before we let you go, Congressman Khan. We're going to do a whole show, hopefully, in the studio in January where we talk about nothing but policy with you here. But on net neutrality, which we just touched on a little bit, you're the congressman from Silicon Valley. What can we do? Because this is a rare issue where the left wing and the right wing and everyone in the middle agrees, except Ajit Pai and Donald Trump. So what can we do to reverse the FCC's actions?
Well, let me briefly say why it matters. It matters, again, particularly for viewers of your show, because what this does is privilege the traditional media, the NBCs, ABCs, CNNs, MSNBCs. They're going to have to pay a cheaper rate, any rate that the internet service providers give them, and they don't have a challenge of getting on to viewers. On the other hand, now I know Young Turks has gotten big, but when you were starting out, any new form of media, people who are blogging from home or doing video blogs, well, they could be priced out. I mean, the internet service providers can cut a deal, and they could see, for example, that the Young Turks viewership is growing and is threatening traditional cable, and they may start to raise prices for this type of broadcast. So it should, ironically, it should concern the right and the left. I mean, Trump was a phenomena not through the establishment. I mean, what this is really going to hurt is non-establishment voices, whether they're liberal voices or conservative voices, and it's going to put special interest into the internet. I mean, right now, the internet is the one place that you shouldn't have to write a big check to have access to, and this takes it away. So I think there are two strategies going forward. One is to go to the courts. Pai's order is so outrageous that the courts, I can't imagine in good conscience would uphold it, because the 1934 Act says that you can't have blatant discrimination on the pipes of mass communication. And Pai is basically ordering that type of, or saying that discrimination is fine. It's important to understand he's not just revealing what Obama did in 2015. He's undermining the net neutrality framework that's existed since the internet's creation. And the second thing is for Congress to act, and what we should do is overturn Pai's order. And there is legislation that Ed Markey is leading in the Senate, Anna Eshoo and Mike Doyle are leading in the House that would do that. So, but the biggest thing and final point here is that we need people here watching to get engaged. I got more calls in my office about net neutrality than any other issue. The video I did that Bernie had posted got more views than anything I've done. One of the tweets I sent went more viral than any other tweet. And so I tell both journalists and the broadcast media and my colleagues that this is not some technical issue. This is an issue that really the grassroots care about, and we just need people to keep making that point.
Yeah, it goes to the core of freedom, and they're trying to take that away on the internet. At least Congressman Ro Khanna is fighting back. We appreciate you joining us at Rebel Headquarters and look forward to having you back soon.
Well, Jack, thank you, and thanks for all you do.
All right, thank you, brother. All right, when we come back, Colonel Applegate taking on Darrell Issa, one of the most loathsome congressmen in all of Capitol Hill. Can he take him down this time? It was the closest election in 2016. Let's find out about the issues that Doug Applegate cares about when we return. All right, back at Rebel headquarters, and we've got a colonel at headquarters here, which we need, I think. I don't think you can really do a Rebel headquarters without a colonel. Colonel Doug Applegate is here. He is running against Darrell Issa in California's 49th district. We talked about it last time you were here. It was the closest race in 2016. I don't even know why people are running against you in the Democratic primary. But honestly, like I'm not saying they shouldn't. I believe in primaries, of
course,
and I think that if they're just naturally running and they think, well, I think I got a good shot, I'll go for it. Bless their hearts, right? But I don't know why the Democratic Party would help anyone but you. You almost beat them last time. You were this close. Why wouldn't they just support you 1,000,000,000%?
I don't know. Maybe they don't want a retired Marine colonel up on Capitol Hill.
Get some order in there, right? Get some courage in there. But of course, the reality is get an uncorrupted progressive in there. That's the key. And so is it, okay, we touched on it last time, and I want to talk about your policy positions in a minute. But do you think that it is freaking out the establishment a little bit that you're not taking the corporate PAC money? Is that some sort of like, I wonder if they're saying, well, I don't know if he's one of us. I don't know if we can trust him since he's not taking corporate PAC money. I genuinely don't know. I'm asking you, do you think that might be an issue, or why wouldn't they back you 100%?
I honestly believe that they came in late the last time, 67 days before the general election. They could have gotten in 2 months before that. And they were shocked that I got as close as I did. And this time around, I think everybody wants a little bit more of a establishment corporate Wall Street Democrat, which has been the downfall of the Democrats for the last 4 decades.
Yeah, look, I know that I'm obsessed with it. This is the second time we're talking about it. But the reason is because it proves the lie that they care about a person who could win. They say, oh, we're just trying to be pragmatic. But we know Doug Applegate can win because he nearly upset him last time against even bigger odds. So anyway, but I did want to touch on one more thing, somewhat related to that. Unrelated to what we do at the Young Turks, another part of the TYT network, TYT Investigates, broke a story about the DCCC memo. So they sent a memo to all the candidates, if you guys didn't see that story, saying that they need to do all these different things. Have unity after the primaries. Well, that's fairly inoffensive, but it depends on what happened in the primaries a little bit, right? They wanted you to spend 75% of your money on like TV ads, pamphlets, media, etc. Seems like a bit of a weird rule. Why shouldn't you be allowed to spend your money in the way that you want to? And not criticize your opponents. Well, that's not how a primary works. So what did you make of that? Did you get that memo? And if you did, what did you make of it?
I got it secondhand. I don't consider it given to me directly. I read it and said, it wasn't good draftsmanship by any lawyering standards. I don't know what a lot of the terms weren't defined, and although you weren't supposed to say anything against your other Democratic opponents, there was a question about, well, what could PACs do? Because a lot of PACs are already backing certain establishment Dems. So I'm of the understanding that the Western Regional Director of the DCCC and vice chair of the DCCC didn't even know that went out. Nobody's called me up to say, Doug, where's your signed copy? So I'm not going to ring them up and ask them if they want one because I haven't seen one that I'd sign yet.
Yeah, and understand that if they encourage super PACs, and by having you put up B-roll, that was one of the things they wanted in the memo. And if you're not from the video world or in TV media world, what's B-roll? B-roll is just you smiling at the camera, you walking. Well, why the hell would you just put that up by itself on a website? So the super PACs can take it and use it in their ads. So they're encouraging super PACs, but telling you to not attack your opponents. But if your opponent has a super PAC, the super PAC will attack you. But you just signed a memo saying you won't attack back. So those are not fair terms. And so it's a good thing they didn't send it to you, because if they had, it probably wouldn't have led to a good result.
Well, the only other thing I would say is, I think that some Democrats, and it's been related to me from off the Hill, they're telling bigger lies than Darrell Issa ever did the first time around. Daryl's lies didn't stick because I erased a 30,000 plus delta that Daryl always won by. And but it just seems, why would a progressive, and that's who supposedly I'm running against on all 3 counts, but you be the judge of that. Why would a progressive tell bigger lies through their own mouths and surrogates? How could they do that and still call themselves progressives?
So then when they ask you not to attack your opponent as they attack you in the ways that you're describing, doesn't seem like it's a fair playing ground, right? So now, look, the reason they didn't back you in the first place or were hesitant is because you are progressive and you supported Bernie Sanders and you fight for these issues. So what are the issues that if you got into Congress that you would fight for that they're so concerned about?
It's bread and butter, things that Democratic Party used to own. It's about jobs, it's about healthcare, it's about education. And why they've lost their way, well, I think you follow the money about that. But one of the reasons that I question that is, how on earth could you find a way to lose the easiest presidential election in history to win? And then be completely powerless to stop the most maniacal, conservative GOP tax plan. Everything that comes out of this administration is beyond the pale. And Democrats apparently are helpless. They haven't stopped anything.
Well, so that goes to a point that we were just talking to Congressman Ro Khanna about, and that I got so frustrated about yesterday, because there was supposed to be a budget showdown where the Democrats, at a bare minimum, asked for the DREAM Act in order to pass the budget, because it's a rare situation where they have leverage, because they need Democratic votes to pass the budget. And Pelosi and Schumer laid down and said, we're not going to fight for it. So I wonder if they're concerned if guys like you come in, that you will fight for it, and they won't get to keep laying down the Republicans. I'm being serious. I think that their donors don't want to upset the markets, so they don't want those kind of showdowns. But then we never get anything. We never get any progressive priorities. So in a budget showdown like that, if you were in Congress today, if you had, instead of barely losing, you had barely won to ISA and you're in, what would you do?
They would have to deliver a DREAM Act with a pathway to citizenship and automatically give, if somebody joins the military, the new DREAM Act should allow people to get citizenship right away. And we've got to start delivering on jobs, on promises to people of color. And it's been all of my life where it's been a carrot on a stick. I've seen it. And the other thing is, there are ways that you could make sure that police officers act constitutionally. And when they don't, you could have a jury instruction that no juror should allow a person's color of their skin, ethnicity, or religion to make them a more dangerous person for a police officer to stop.
There's so many things to do, and it feels like the Democratic leadership isn't doing any of them right now. And so look, let's put up the graphic here for how you can volunteer and donate, and all the links will be in the description box below. So if you want small donor candidates, progressive candidates to win, go help them. If you're in the 49th district, volunteering your time is the most important thing you would do. So I'm a believer in your campaign. I want to follow it more closely. If you can keep on coming in, talking to us about not just the policies that you're pushing for, but also that primary is going to be super interesting politically, both on the Democratic side and then eventually the general election against ISA. So if you can give us updates on it, we'd really appreciate it. And guys, I want to leave you on that carrot and stick idea. I mean, here, Colonel Applegate has got it exactly right. Democrats keep saying, come a little further, right? If you just keep giving us your votes for another 40 years, we'll finally deliver for you. But that day never comes. And so it's about time we grab that carrot and that stick and started using it politically to get progressive priorities through. And if we have enough congressmen like Doug Applegate here, I think that we can begin to make that progress.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. All right. Thank you, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.